I always look at the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and I'm blown away. You know, the man changed the world in 23 years. And you don't see him hustling. You see him calm. You see him tranquil. You see him up at night praying. You see him with his family. You see him playing with children. You see him with his community. You see him present. And we know the exact movements he did when he woke up, which is beautiful. His routine was very fluid. However, there were some anchors in his day, especially 5 daily prayers. And when Barakah enters into something, there's almost like a spiritual reaction where there's like more with less. There's abundance. There's energy. Sakhr al-Ghamdi was a merchant, and he heard this hadith. He made a spiritually intelligent decision. He decided to send his trade early in the morning. He became very wealthy as a result. In fact, one of the things that I've done, I've stopped wearing watches. And it's incredible. You'd be amazed how much more less stress I experience, and I feel more barakah in my time. Time flows more naturally. I'm a huge believer in naps. It makes a huge difference to your day. You almost have 2 mornings. So you take a nap, and I think if the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was the busiest man or most important man in history, took a nap, don't tell me more important than him. Right? You gotta take a nap as well.
I know in your book you talk a lot about the lifestyle and the habits of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Can you tell us a little bit more about his lifestyle look like? What did his morning routine look like? Before we start this episode, I want to flag that only 5% of you are subscribed to the channel, so please do consider subscribing, as it does help out the channel and does help bring out better guests in the future. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Mohammed Faris is the founder of The Productive Muslim and author of the book The Barakah Effect. He began his journey in the mid-2000s when he started the Productive Muslim blog, becoming a pioneer in bridging Islamic spirituality, productivity and personal development. Beyond his writing and speaking career, he's also developed frameworks like the Barakah Culture, which frames spiritual growth alongside worldly achievement. In this conversation, I want to discuss what Barakah truly means and how to transition from hustle culture to Barakah culture in our lives, practical strategies for everyday Muslims to remain God-centered while excelling in their careers, and learning more about the lifestyles and routines of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Muhammad, thanks for coming on.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair. Thanks for having me.
This word Barakah gets thrown around quite a lot, and I feel like if you look up on Google, or kind of what we get told at Saturday school is that it gets translated as blessing, but I don't feel like that fully captures the profundity of what it is. Can you give us a better definition of what it is and dive a little deeper into it?
Yeah, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Yeah, I mean, I think all of us are fascinated by this word barakah, right? I mean, growing up, you hear word barakah a lot from our parents, grandparents. Whenever you get a new job, someone says, "May Allah put barakah in your job." When you get married, you put barakah in your marriage. You get a child, inshallah soon. May put barakah in your children, right? Everyone's like, the idea of barakah comes in quite often. And the same thing I was fascinated is like, what is this whole barakah thing, right? Trying to understand it. And blessing doesn't quite capture it. It feels kind of like not empty, but something missing. So I went on this journey, kind of asking different scholars, researching, I try to understand even the root word or barakah. And I'll start with the web of meaning and kind of hopefully come to a definition. The first thing is to recognize that barakah is a gift, right? It's a divine gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that can enter into anything, can enter into your time, into your wealth, into your children, into your laptop, into your smartphone, into your Instagram account, into your projects, into your career, into your startup, inshallah, like anything. And when barakah enters into something, there's almost like this spiritual reaction where there's like more with less. There's abundance, there's energy, there's this sort of growth that is hard to define. And over time I realized that barakah, the way I now describe barakah, is it's a gift from God, gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that enters into things that are tangible, intangible. So tangible could be time, could be a laptop or a car or an apartment, or intangible like your time, your sleep, your ideas, your insights. And then once it enters something, there's this Barakah Effect, which is like this whole chemical spiritual reaction happens. But the most important part of this is that when you see this barakah, it brings you back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It makes you grateful. So the reason why I don't like the word barakah is blessing. Fir'aun had a lot of blessing. That's not barakah, because he used that blessing again, he turned away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when we have barakah, it makes us realize, subhanAllah, like the amount of how much time Allah expanded that time, how Allah gave me this much, you become so grateful that you want to even go back further. And the way you experience in barakah, I will say that barakah can experience in physical means, right? This is the normal one. Yeah, you see some kind of increase, some growth, right? Your startup explodes, something just grows beyond expectation. That's one way though. But there are other ways that barakah manifests itself. One could be stability. I also see people like sometimes having stable health, stable mental health. stable marriage, stable income, stable, just stability in general. It's a form of barakah. I shared in my recent newsletter, talk about, I was in Turkey and Spain for some conferences. When I came back, I heard there was an earthquake in Istanbul, and Spain had the electric outage, and I'm like, subhanallah, just like we take going on a work trip and back and having nothing eventful happening, that's barakah by itself. Also, barakah can also be continuity, meaning that, when you do something on an ongoing basis, let's say you have a halaqah, you've been going for so many years, you have a project, hasn't exploded, but hasn't stopped either, right?
Yeah.
You've been doing something, you have an app, you have a tool, you have something that's been going for years, right? It hasn't grown, but the fact it continues is a form of barakah as well. But also I'd like to say that barakah is not just all nice and rosy, right? It could also mean that you might be going through a really tough situation, but you have that stability in your heart, right? To be able to endure it. That's barakah, because stability is a form of barakah. So for example, having this inner peace, right? The world is going crazy around you, and you're chill. Right? that for me, like, that's barakah, because it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has held your heart together, right? You might be going through some really tough situation, but that's barakah. We see people, our brothers and sisters in Gaza, right? Extreme situation. And some of the words they're saying, you're like, how? The words of rida, the words they're saying, it's something you can't even process. That stability is barakah. Also, the idea of sometimes you might be going through a situation where you think, man, how will I get out of this? Let's say you have this huge debt or a legal case against you, right? And you think, how will I get out of this? Barakah is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the facilitate things for you, right? You're like, oh, that thing, I got out of it. Like, I don't know how, but just somehow. SubhanAllah, I was with a brother over the weekend, and he shared a story of how he had to go to a court for debt he had, and he thought he would be imprisoned. And it was him and another brother who was in the cell with him, and the judge heard their cases, and they said, okay, we'll come back and let you know the sentence, so to speak. So in the meantime, this one brother, he basically had I think 2,500 debt he didn't pay off. So this brother said, I had 5,000 with me. I gave him 2,500. Like, you take it. At least you get out, and I'll sort myself out. SubhanAllah, it goes, when the judge came back, he said, okay, you have to pay 5,000 because I only have 2,500 left. So he called his friend, and his friend sorted him out. But he goes, I literally was not expected to get out of I thought I'd be going to jail straight. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just for the barakah of giving charity, Allah maybe things easy for me. I got out of it. Now, mashallah, is doing quite well. So I think sometimes it's really this holistic understanding. I know it's not a very succinct definition because we're dealing with something divine, right? It's and something divine, and sometimes it's hard to wrap your head around it. The best you can say is a gift from God that enters into things, tangible and intangible, which creates this Barakah Effect, whether it's physical or unseen, and hopefully makes us get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
You've coined this term Barakah Culture, and you kind of compare this to like modern day hustle culture. Can you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, I think because I started my journey as a productivity researcher, right? So Productive Muslim blog, and I was trying to understand what is the Islamic worldview of productivity, because you think being productive sounds like get things done, achieve things, right? And somehow that model didn't quite sit well with me, because I feel like, well, it's not just about getting work done. For me, productivity is about managing your energy, focus, and time across all your roles. So whether you're a father, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you are a son, whether you are a mother, a neighbor, a volunteer, it's been being put across all your roles. So it's trying to understand what is that model productivity, because it seems like there's a narrative that to be successful, we got to subscribe to the hustle culture model productivity, which says ego-centered, me, myself, and I, material success driven, results driven, outcome driven. And, you live only once, you gotta, hustle 4 a.m., you're up there doing some emails, and you see all these videos of YouTubers and people like, oh, look at me, I'm hustling, hashtag hustle culture, where work has become the new religion, right? We derive meaning, purpose, community, values from our work. And when we say, well, how would what's the different terminology? How can we redefine productivity from an Islamic angle? And that's when the word barakah comes in. It's like, well, if you're God-centered, if you're akhirah focused, if you're purpose impact driven, that's what I mean barakah culture. Now, when I say this, sometimes some people misunderstand me. Say, oh, it means you guys, you Muslims relax, need barakah, it's okay, it doesn't matter. And I say, no, it's not. It's actually more hard work, because when you work truly for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking Allah's acceptance versus your own ego, it's a different ballgame. It's like it's almost like you have a higher bar to fulfill versus I'm just doing my work part. If you're trying to maintain responsibility across your roles, not just at work, that's hard, right? Because not just by being great at work and then terrible with your family. It's saying, well, how do I balance across all my roles? How do I show up as a family? How do I show up to my community? So Barakah Culture is about this intentional living, God-centered, akhirah focused, purpose impact driven, about not being rushed or busy, right? I always look at the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I'm blown away. I mean, the man changed the world in 23 years, and you don't see him hustling in our modern understanding of hustling, right? You don't see him like, sorry, I gotta go, I have a mission today. You see him calm, you see him tranquil, you see him up at night praying, you see him with his family, you see him playing with children, you see him with his community, you see him present, right? Not busy, rush, I gotta go. So I feel like there's something there that we need to learn from. And I use the word culture because it's not a one-man show. It has to be part of the mindsets, the values, the behaviors of everyone around. And normally the difficulty is when you try to live this Barakah culture in a very hustle culture environment, whether it's in a corporate environment or startup environment or any situation where the environment is so toxic, right? We most startups at least have imported the Silicon Valley model. All-nighters, right? Ramen noodles, right? Bring coffee until you pop.
Sleep on the floor.
Yeah, sleep on the floor, right? And then build, ship, ignore everything else. And I challenge that. And I know it's not popular and people think, yeah, but what's the alternative? Because we haven't seen role models. And I'm sure there are role models, we don't celebrate them, we don't showcase them. And we need, hopefully through your show, like celebrate models of people working with Barakah culture and achieving success and impacting the world, but not perhaps with the metrics and measurements of the hustle culture.
Yeah, to be fair, this has been something I've seen up close with the guys at Islamic Finance Guru. Because, these guys are, went from that corporate route to, building a startup. And, they didn't subscribe to this, Silicon Valley, notion of entrepreneurship. They had kids, they were married by the time they quit their jobs and started their company. And then even, going through the hustles and the motion of, building a company, it's very difficult. There's a lot to go through. They didn't compromise when it comes to their deen, they didn't compromise when it comes to their family values. And, we need, more people like that to come about in our community.
Absolutely, yeah. We role models. I think the role models, because right now, who we're seeing as role models, right? We're seeing the guys from the Bay Area, basically. Versus there are other models, right? There are other ways of being successful. And I think as a community that has the last divine message to mankind, we have the ultimate model. And through the Prophet Muhammad. So I think we need to just understand what our values are, understand our principles, our mindsets, our behaviors, and live by that, knowing that this is the best way, inshallah.
Just to make this practical, say that you're Bilal at McKinsey, you're a level 1 or level 0 on your Barakah journey. What are some of the 3-4 steps that he can start this week to start attaining more Barakah in his life, in his lifestyle, in his routine, in his work?
I love that. The first thing is more of a deep realization of who they are, who Bilal is. Meaning, a lot of us, we tend to attach our identity to our work. Right? Who we are is our work. The moment we take a work away, it's like we lose. Like the first question you ask any guy, what do you do? Right? This is the first question, right? And I think the first step is to identify yourself as a abd of Allah. I'm a slave of God. And really own it. Not intellectually. Most of us say, oh yeah, of course, we worship Allah. We know that. But no, like really embrace and identify yourself. I am a slave. And I use the word slave intentionally. Not servant, not worshipper, slave. You're owned by God. And the moment you have it, you're like, oh, that means I have a master. That means I have to organize my life around him, serving him. Like that's what it means to be a slave of Allah. So step 1 for Bilal is to realize not McKinsey is my boss, not even my family is my boss, not anyone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's my master. Once you've accepted that at a deep level, is to reconfigure his life around that identity. Which means what? Which means prioritizing salat times, which means prioritizing the values, prioritizing behaviors. Now is like really, okay, what does it mean to be an abd of Allah in this environment? Then comes the third part is to say, well, it could be a simple thing like focus on intentions. What's the intention for today, right? Okay, how do I show up to work? What's the intention behind what I say, how I speak, how I show up? Like being more intentional. Barakah culture is a very intentional driven culture, which is very unique to our culture. Most hustle culture is very outcome driven, results driven. Because barakah is about intention. What's the niyyah? Because that's what you get rewarded. That's what you're going to be judged upon, not the outcome. The outcome is not up to you. I will say, it brings example, Nuh alayhi salam. I mean, the guy went 950 years, right? Calling people. But in the end, if you look at the results, it's not much. But he was not judged by the results. He was judged by the outcome and the effort and the intentions he put in. So I feel like that's the 3 steps: is identify yourself abd of Allah, reconfigure your life as abd of Allah, and then live an intentional life where every step is like aligned with that intention. Now, is it easy? No. Will you get clash between what the McKinseys or whatever ask from you and how you push back? I mean, this is where it gets really tough. This is where the rubber hits the road. And for most people, sometimes they're in environments that are supportive, sometimes the environment not supportive, and that's a different conversation completely.
How would you advise to like overcome this? Because, you know, people are trying to implement this in their life. They're finding it, you know, difficulty. What's that kind of like mental framework to like push through that, to, you know, adopt that in your life?
I come back to this idea of recognizing who you are and recognize where you're going. Right? If I know I'm abd of Allah, and that's my identity, and I'm really convinced about that, and I know that I'm going to be meeting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the akhirah. I mean, and these are such basic truths that they're non-negotiable for me. Yes, there'll be difficulties. Yes, there'll be tough conversations. Yes, there'll be some people upset. Yes, I might, worst case scenario, lose my job. Like, there are all these situations which are real. But in the end, it's like, these are all things worth sacrificing for. Because I feel like, you know, one of the challenges we have in modern life is we have this comfort-seeking lifestyle, right? We want the comfort, we want the ease, and we don't want to challenge ourselves. We don't want to sacrifice. We don't want to sweat, right? It feels uncomfortable. We want to have Islam, but, you know, comfortable Islam. We want to have, and subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us in the Quran, like, do you think you'll be entering Jannah without being tested? Like, do you feel you're just going to go through life, breeze through without being tested? Because that's the nature of this life. So I think being comfortable, getting uncomfortable, especially when you hold on to your values and principles, and a lot of times, 90% of the time, it actually works out in your favor because people respect you, they see you, okay, you seem solid, they know what you're doing, they value, and they work with you. The 10% situation, yes, you might have some extreme situations where people say, well, we can't fit in this culture, and ma'as-salam, you know, goodbye. And that happens, true. I don't want to sort of not saying that it won't happen. But I think it's when you know your principle, know who you are, know who you're going, it makes those decisions much easier, right? Now, the consequence of these decisions or the impact of these decisions on your personal life, these are all the challenges that this is part of the battle that we got, the jihad we have to go through, right? The struggle we go through as part of being abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah, I completely agree with that sentiment. You know, when I was working in the corporate world, you know, it was scary to like stand your ground. The big one for me was Jummah prayers. You know, you're working on a deal, you're getting meetings sent, 12 p.m., 1 p.m. and you're like thinking about, how can I kind of balance this? But I think when you take a stand and take yourself like really seriously, like make it known that, you're a Muslim and, this is something that's like a non-negotiable, then people will like respect that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, huge. I mean, and it's not only about the behaviors like salah and finding a place to pray and fasting, but also about the mindsets, right? The values, what you value. So many times we test them more like value, like honesty, ethics, doing things with the ihsan, right? There's so many things that might not be as black and white as going Jum'ah, but more on the values. And I think that's sometimes it can be even more harder because it feels wishy-washy. Oh, it's okay, Muhammad, let it through, right? But you're like, no, right? I'm sorry, like this does not feel right. This is unethical. This feels like it's there's a bit of injustice here, right? No one's watching. I know, but Allah's watching me, right? Like I feel like that sort of mindset and values is very, very important to have as well.
We've talked about a few ways that we can attain more barakah in our lives, but what are some common habits that we do to deter or push barakah out of our lives?
I think a few, of course. The key is the general rule is anything that displeases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, right, so our sins in general are barakah sort of detractors, right? Whether it's major sins like riba or even some minor sins. Sometimes you do something and you realize, subhanAllah, like this is actually going to remove barakah from you. And that's why some of the scholars say that I would see the impact of my sins on my family and on my ride. I mean, they'll see that, something got sick. Like they see that they have this spiritual intelligence, right? They know that, hey, if I commit a sin, there's consequences, whether in this world or the next. It's not like, and unless I seek repentance and ask Allah for forgiveness. So I think that barakah detractors. And I think the other one which I'm even noticing more is idea of salah. I think salah is something that we tend to take so granted, and we tend to sort of neglect or, like something we do.
An
inshallah,
afterthought.
as an afterthought or when I have time, when I'm rushing through it. But I see it as one of the central rituals that actually help maintain and ground you in Barakah culture. So I think how we approach Salah, how we actually pray, those are really important. Delay, like there's this, Imam Hassan Basri talks about this idea of when you delay Salah, like you always delay Salah and you're late for Salah, everything else in your life is late. And subhanAllah, it's such a beautiful observation. Like, your marriage is late, your work is late, that deal you're waiting for, it gets late. But be on time in Salah and notice how things will be on time for you. So I feel like this is what I call spiritual intelligence, where you see the link between the spiritual world and the physical world, right? If I get up at Fajr and pray Fajr on time, I see the barakah in that day. If I read the Quran today, even though I'm so busy, I see the barakah in my day. If I say salawat as I go through my day, I see the barakah. If I do istighfar, I see the barakah. If I commit a sin, I notice the barakah being removed. Like, that's spiritual intelligence that I feel like we need to be at that level, and it should be normal. It should not feel weird. It should not feel like, oh, this is wishy-washy. No, it's real, and we've got to experience it, basically.
Yeah. I know in your book you talk a lot about the lifestyle and the habits of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Can you tell us a little bit more about, what did his lifestyle look like? What did his morning routine look like?
I think the first of all, to make sure that when we just study his routine sallallahu alaihi wasallam is number one, the word routine is not the right word, because we think routine is 9 to 5, doing the same thing every day at the same time. His routine was very fluid. However, there were some anchors in his day, right? Especially 5 daily prayers. These were like anchors that anchored him. Secondly, his tahajjud was from his fard upon him, right? But even his tahajjud is interesting. It was not every night he prayed like the whole night. I mean, this is something we think, every night Prophet prayed the whole night. No. Some nights, even Aisha would say, some nights he would be up all night, some nights would be not up the whole night. Usually he would sleep part of the night, normally the first part of the night, so after Aisha, till midnight. And then he'll sleep, and then he'll pray till the last sixth of the night. And by the way, I love these terms like last sixth of the night, last third of the night, because there's no clocks back then. The fact they knew time without clocks is something, a different topic I talk about, like the idea of how we've organized our lives around the clocks. We don't understand time outside of the clock. But they would know when is the last third, when is the last sixth, based on this, and the moon and this, and the stars. And he'll take a nap before the last, in the last sixth of the night. And then so his morning routine, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, would be when he hears the adhan of Fajr by Bilal radhiyallahu anhu, he would open his eyes, because again, he's been up all night, he'd been part of the night sleeping, part of the night praying. He'll take a little nap before Fajr. So he'd open his eyes when he hears the adhan. And we know the exact movements he did when he woke up, which is beautiful, right? I always say we have to really be so thankful to the Sahabas and the wives of Prophet ﷺ, how they shared so much detail. Like we know which foot he used to enter the restroom, which foot he used to enter the masjid and leave. That's just, that level of detail is just mind-boggling. But subhanAllah, the idea there is that he would open, you say, when he wakes up, he would rub his eyes, he would grab the siwak, right? The first thing, he would grab the siwak. And then after he does the siwak, then he mentions Allah's name. Again, this is out of adab, right? The idea of you purify your mouth before worship, and you mention Allah's name. And then he would sit and listen to the adhan. When the adhan is completed, he'll say the dua after adhan. And then he'll get up and prepare himself for salah. And then he'll wait in his home until Bilal radhiyallahu anhu will say, Ya Rasulullah, as-salah ya Rasulullah. It's time for prayer. And again, it's not a strict 20 minutes, of course. Like, it's flexible. How many people show up? Then he said Bismillah. He would leave the house, leaving his left foot. Enter the, and so leave the house, enter the masjid with his right foot. Again, his masjid and the house are attached. He'll lead the prayers. After prayers, he would turn towards the Sahaba. After doing his adhkar, he would engage with them. He'll have conversation. Did anyone see his dream last night? Might share a dream. They'll bring a baby that was born last night. They'll share some, like, it was very communal as well. He'll stay in the masjid until sunrise. After sunrise, he'll pray 2 rak'ahs, and then he'll go inside the homes. He'll check on all his family, his wives, his children. He'll check on all of them. And then he'll ask, هل عندكم شيء? Do you have anything to eat? Right? Sometimes, Ya Rasulullah, ما عندنا شيء. We have nothing to eat. Right? And that's, again, like, we imagine not having morning coffee. I mean, probably that whole day is a disaster. But subhanAllah, he's like, there's nothing. I'm like, okay, I'm fasting then. Like, he's very flexible. So that's like, his routine seems very fluid, yet purposeful. Right? Very calm. Yes, it achieves so much. He would after if he had breakfast, and breakfast means like few dates, right?
Yeah.
He would come back after that. He would pray in the masjid, and then that's when his official day starts, meaning that the companions would come. He's teaching a lesson. Delegations would come. He'd prepare for strategy for the if there's any battlefield, all that stuff, all the way till dhuhr, and then dhuhr, and before dhuhr he'll take a nap normally, and that's again a common thing. We'll also being productive. Like, I'm a huge believer in naps. It makes a huge difference to your day. You almost have 2 mornings. So you take a nap, and I think if the Prophet Muhammad Sallam, who was the busiest man or most important man in history, took a nap, don't tell me more important than him. Right? You gotta take a nap as well. Take a nap, pray Dhuhr. Again, after Dhuhr, he'll be with his family. Mostly, sometimes he'll be out in errands, but mostly with his family. After Asr, also strictly family time usually. Like he'll spend time with his wives, with his children. And then after Maghrib, he would have dinner, either before or after Maghrib, depending on the time. After Isha, sleep. So it's it was very natural. Like when I go over the routine, and we have a whole free course on our website, a prophetic routine course, and they're like, oh, that doesn't sound too hard. It doesn't sound like we think, oh my God, it must be like this super rigid, stressful, but it feels so natural. And in fact, I also feel if you want to experience prophetic routine, like try to go Medina without a clock, and just literally live around the 5 daily prayers, and you'll probably mimic most of his routines.
Yeah. I think a lot of people will hear this and be like, okay, Bilal at McKinsey again, he's like, that's all well and good, but I gotta be up for like 7 o'clock. I gotta be in the office for like 8:30. My manager is gonna be emailing me in the evening. Like what's some like practical advice to like implement this into our lives?
I love that. So I think I always say people when they look at prophetic routine, sometimes people get overwhelmed. Like, listen, choose one part and make it real. Even just the morning part, the waking up part, right? Most of us, when we wake up in the morning, first we do is check our phones, right? See what's whose messages last night. We kind of, by the time we kind of get up early, if you just implement the part I said where he rubbed his eyes, he used to work, mention Allah's name. If you can hear that, then he does that. Then pray, make wudu, go to the masjid or pray. If there's no masjid nearby, pray in the home, do your adhkar, do your Quran, and then start your day. Just notice a huge difference between that and checking your phone and stressing out what's coming up, right? Like even from a productivity perspective, they say protect your first hour, because you don't want your brain to be hijacked by the outside world from day one, from the early hours. You want to protect your brain, protect your hour. So just doing that, where you have that space, mental space, where it's just you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You, Quran, Fajr, Adhkar, Quran. Maybe you want to do some planning for the day. If you have time for exercise, have a breakfast, head out to work, and then you start your day. Notice the difference you're having in terms of productivity. And that's just one part of his routine. The other one is naps. Again, just take that one part. I'll take a nap. The other one, if you can, is some kind of strictly family time moment, right? Perhaps after Asr, having dinner early, right? Sleeping after Isha is another one as well. So that you can pick something from his routine and say, I'm following this part, not because of Andrew Huberman told me, some particular guru told me. I'm doing it because I'm actually emulating the Prophet ﷺ in his day routine.
What's the significance of the morning? Like, it's something that comes up, not just from like the prophetic tradition, but then also in just like in general, like good productivity. Like, what is like so special about the morning? Like,
SubhanAllah, Allah subhanahu talks about the وَالصُّبْحِ إِذَا تَنَفَّسْ, right? When the morning and it kind of breathes, right? So there's an element of like, there's a start there, right? And Prophet Muhammad says, "Burika li ummati bukuriha." There's barakah for my ummah in the early hours. So morning time is actually a time of barakah. Again, remember I said to Allah, barakah is a gift that enters into things. One of the things Allah put barakah in is He put barakah in the early hours. He put barakah in the morning time. And it's interesting that the narrator of the hadith, Sakhr al-Ghamidi, the one who says the hadith of the early hours are blessed for my nation, he says that Sakhr al-Ghamidi, Imam Bukhari talks about him, he says Sakhr al-Ghamidi was a merchant. And he heard this hadith. And he made a spiritually intelligent decision. He decided to send his trade early in the morning. He became very wealthy as a result, right? So again, talk about spiritual intelligence, right? He knew that if I start early in my day, I'll get more barakah in my day. So let me do that. So I feel like there's a lot in the morning, from a functional perspective, from a biological perspective, from a body perspective. And I know people say, I'm a night person, I'm a morning person. Honestly speaking, the only reason we're night people is because of these overhead lights, right? If you take somebody who's a night owl, take them to a camping where there's nothing except sunlight, they will naturally become morning people, right? Because there's no artificial light to keep them going beyond the normal time. So I think this whole idea of this night people and morning people, yes, there might be a difference of 1 or 2 hours how early you sleep or how early you wake up, but it's everyone can benefit from the morning hours.
I think something that a lot of people aspire to, including myself, is trying to implement the Tahajjud into our lifestyle. There's numerous hadith about the significance and the benefits to our lives. What's some practical advice for implementing that? Because I know for myself, every time I try, I may do it once or twice, but then it doesn't become a routine or habit in my lifestyle.
I love that. So the advice I share might be not conventional, but I feel it helps with at least having a habit of Qiyamul Layl. The key thing is to remember, tahajjud, yes, it's the last third of the night, and that is a very precious time. However, the reward is for qiyamul layl. Qiyamul layl means any voluntary sort of act, prayer between maghrib until fajr. So technically speaking, you can pray your qiyamul layl after maghrib, which Abu Bakr Siddiq used to do. Abu Huraira he said, my Khalil, my beloved Prophet awsani to pray with before sleeping, right? So I think sometimes we need to, the tahajjud is like, okay, this is the level 10, let's say. What's the first step? What can I build a habit of doing qiyamul layl every night? Which means what? Which means 2 rak'ahs, which I could do, 4 rak'ahs, or how many rak'ahs I could do before sleeping. That's the one I can guarantee. That's number one. So number one is separate tahajjud, qiyamul layl, and let's at least get qiyamul layl going, established. That's the first step. The second thing is to remember to benefit from the seasons. Right now in the summer here, and Fajr is really early. It's really hard to wake up 3 o'clock in the morning to pray because you have a work day and all that stuff. So in the summer, pray your qiyamul layl before Fajr, before Isha. Before sleeping. In the winter, however, when Fajr is very late, you have the benefit of more long hours, then get up and pray. And I think being even with the seasons, work with the seasons to help you as well. And the third, of course, is to set the intention. I will say I'm a big believer, like you set the intention, you take the means, right? So you take the means, meaning whether physical means, whether it's biological means, like what are the means I take to make sure I wake up, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it happen for you. But I feel we also need to overcome this all or nothing mindset. Sometimes like, oh my God, it has to be the 3 o'clock in the morning, tahajjud, otherwise I'm not doing anything, right? I think there's an element of let's be part of the qiyamul layl, the people of the night, because that's the reward is for that mainly, right? And then yes, of course, the last third is better, but at least when on our journey, let's start there, inshallah.
No, I love that. There's a common complaint that goes around. People always say like, I don't have time, I can't find time, my kids take up my time, this takes up my time, work takes up time. What's your approach for like time management, or like people live and breathe like by the calendar, how do you find barakah in that time? What's your approach to managing your day, managing your time, managing your calendar?
Okay. First, I'll answer 2 ways. One is the philosophical or the approach, the worldview. And the second one is the more practical. The worldviews, I have an article on my website called The Tyranny of the Mechanical Clock, in which I argue that we've become so conditioned to organize our day around the clock that we don't think of time any other way. And I think it challenges us to kind of start understand, like, is this the only way to organize our time? Or there are other ways? Yes, we should structure our time. Right? And Imam Ghazali talks about structuring your day. But we structure our time again as a abd of Allah. What does that mean? That means around the 5 daily prayers. That's the keystone moments of our day. Now, and in between that, being open. In fact, one of the things that I've done, I've stopped wearing watches. And it's incredible. You'd be amazed how much more less stress I experience. And I don't have stress as much. I'm not always checking my clock. Oh my God, I'm noticing. And I feel more barakah in my time. Time flows more naturally. Now, if I have an appointment coming up, okay, I'll preempt that. I'll check my phone every now and then, what time I have to be there, all that. But I stop having, and it's such just even that simple experience when I'm not attached to the clock made a huge difference. And I would share more details why is that in the article. So that's one of the philosophical approach to time. The second thing is being intentional. Again, back to intentional. Like I always say, instead of having to-do list, have an intentions list. What's my niyyah for today? Right? What's my niyyah for this week? And just being intentional can be amazing, because then you're like, I know what I want, what I don't want. For example, let's say my intention is to spend more time with my children this week. Okay, so that means I won't do any last minute crazy emails, like me calls. I'll be more saying what I'll say no to, I'll say yes to. I'll be more proactive about things. What's my intention for this week? My intention is to spend more time in the Quran. Okay, I have to make sure I have some time for the Quran. My intention is to be more present with my parents. Okay, I'm going to spend more time, speaking to them. So I feel like being intentional versus just being reactive is another big factor, and that comes with really having a weekly intentions. I always have every Saturday morning or Sunday morning, depending on the weekend, I have like a 2-3 hour period, just plan the week. But I plan the week based on intentions. What's my intention for this week? And then I start putting things. Now I put things in my calendar. And I use my calendar as my intentions map. It's almost like, oh Allah, this is what I intend to do for your sake. And I'm trying to like really organize that if I drop dead today, I hope Allah rewards me for all the things I intend to do in the following week, right? Because it's my intention. Now, how the day unfolds is up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's and what I do with my calendar is I have this, so I set the intentions map for the week. And then I'll sit and begin each day, like, what's my intention for today? I'll schedule stuff. and then as the day progresses, I'll actually shift things, how things actually unfolded. That thing which I thought would take 3 hours ended up taking like half an hour. That thing which I thought would take half an hour took actually 3 hours. And I'll be almost like giving a real time feedback on what went well, what didn't go well, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. Sometimes random things open up. Sometimes I feel tired and lazy. Sometimes I feel not in a good mood. And that really gives you perspective of how your day folds. So I prefer that. Set your count is more your intentions map, not your master, basically. Now, again, I'm speaking here as an entrepreneur who owns business versus Bilal, our friend Bilal, who's corporate job, who's billed by the hour, and what does that mean? I think this is where it gets at least whenever you feel you have 3 periods of time where you've control of your time: mornings, noon, lunchtime, and evenings. So I say to Bilal is even if during the day you don't have much control of your time, at least master your mornings, your noons, and your afternoon and your evenings, because that will give you at least a sense of control and in this crazy world in between, basically, as well.
Yeah. Just on the point on intention, in your book you have this concept of living life as a gardener versus living life as a carpenter. I absolutely love this framework. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I mean, most of us we think as carpenters we call again the hustle culture environment where I'm trying to build this table, right? And so for me, this is the outcome that I want, and I'm so fixated on this outcome. If things don't go my way, oh my God, right? I get upset, I get mad, I get depressed, I get anxious, versus a gardener says, well, I plant the seeds, I work hard, I sweat, but I cannot guarantee the fruits. And that's really hard to swallow. You think of most of us, again, you're a startup founder, you work hard, you're expecting results. You hope you get cheap results. When I say I'm not attached to the results, that's the hardest part. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala challenges in the Quran. He teaches us that, again, through all the prophets that went before. The Nuh alayhi salam, as I said earlier, all the prophets where the gardener is like, well, you plant the seeds, you work hard, and you cannot guarantee results. He says in the Quran, أَفَرَأَيْتُمْ مَا تَحْرُثُونَ أَأَنْتُمْ تَزْرَعُونَ وَنَحْنُ الزَّارِعُونَ. Do you see that seed which you sow? Is it you who makes it grow, or Allah makes it grow? You're like, well, Allah makes it grow, right? Because it's not me, right? So think of that seed as anything. It could be a business, your family, your children. A lot of parents struggle with this. Right? You have a fixed image of success. My son is a doctor or engineer, right? A fixed image of success versus, actually, I will provide the values. I give them the best environment. I hope for the best. I pray for the best, but I cannot guarantee. Again, Nuh alayhi salam, his own son did not believe in him. He's a great father. I'm sure he's an amazing father. He's a prophet. But subhanAllah, his own son did not believe in him. So I feel like this is where the gardener mindset is actually very liberating, because you think, okay, as long as I focus on intentions, so I need to make sure my intention is sincere. As long as I work hard and I put in my efforts, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, back to that, I'm a slave and he's my master, and I'm asking my master, Allah, enable this to happen. And then if he helps, and look at the outcome, if it's how I expected, better than expected, alhamdulillah, I have shukr. If it's not as expected, I have sabr and I persevere and I try again. I don't give up. And if the door is completely shut, then I have rida, contentment. There's khair in this. Maybe there's a reason why this door is completely shut. I'm not upset about it. Versus a hustle culture environment where you're so obsessed with the outcome and you have this fixed image of success that you can't imagine another form of success that Allah might be better for you, right? And you get upset when you don't get that specific image of success. This is a way for you to liberate yourself from that. And I find it very empowering. I'm not afraid anymore. Because it's not, example, let's say if I tell you, build a let's build a masjid or build an orphanage or feed 1,000 people. You might think, oh my God, again, you think of the outcome, how would I do it? It's too much. Set the intention, work hard, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, how it's going to happen, we don't know.
Yeah.
But these three, that means it just keeps you going. It might even happen in your generation. That's the best thing. Like, it makes you feel more long term versus be very short term. Things that gotta happen in my lifetime. I might plant the seeds. I might work on something, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it happen, inshallah.
I mean, you kind of touched upon it, but I think the main reason for me asking that, also, I just left my dream job to like build this tech startup, and I've got this big vision or grander plans of like what I want to do, and it's a lot of grit, it's a lot of confusion, like you don't know what you're doing, and obviously it can get like quite frustrating, if you're not seeing like the results that I want, but how can I mean, first of all, like what's the diagnosis for myself? Like, why am I feeling this way? What's lacking in my own faith? What's lacking in my own life, such that I hear this and I recognize it. But then I'm like, is it because I love it so much and I don't have that relationship with Allah? And if so, what's the solution to that then?
I love it. I think this is something very important to know, that feeling is fine, right? Feeling upset, feeling frustrated, feeling is fine. The question is, how do you channel that feeling, right? Feeling worried is fine. Feeling sad, those emotions are normal. It's human. In fact, I'd be very worried if you didn't have zero feelings, right? Those emotions are normal. But how do you react to those emotions? And the same thing when Prophet Muhammad lost his son Ibrahim alayhi salam, Ibrahim, his son Ibrahim, he felt sad, right? And his eyes teared, and the Sahaba were like, "Whoa, you're the Prophet. You should be like, this qadr of Allah. We should move on." No, but he's human, right? It's part of his human nature. So feeling worried, sad, frustrated, annoyed, disappointed is normal. The question is, how do you channel that? I think the equation helps you channel that. Say, okay, well, I'm upset, I'm sad, I'm disappointed, I wish I could have done better. Well, number one, let me go back. What's my niyyah? So I go, this is where diagnosis comes in. What's my niyyah? Is my niyyah sincere? Is it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is it for my ego? Can I improve my intention? Let's look at it. Did I take all the natural means, natural ways, natural sort of laws? Is there someone I need to learn from? Is there something I need to improve? Is there process improvement? Did I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Did I get up for tahajjud? Did I get up for, did I fulfill the duties as a abd of Allah so that He gives me tawfiq, gives me success that I'm looking for? You analyze through those three lenses, and then you say, and I keep going. And then if things go wrong, I'll come back to this equation. Salah ad-Din Ayyubi did not just like walk into Jerusalem, right? He failed, right? He goes, he failed, right? He didn't say, well, it's not meant for me, it's not written for me. No, he went again and went again, a few times until he actually conquered Jerusalem. So I feel this idea of, yes, it's normal, yes, it's healthy to have those feelings, but how do you channel those feelings? And you either channel them through improving your spiritual energy, your intentions, the tahajjud, the charity, the things you can do to spiritual, and taking the means, right? The aqilha wa tawakkal, like tie your camel and trust Allah. So this is where you should channel those feelings towards, because that gives you that confidence to go through, inshallah.
I love it. Very, very practical for myself. You've spoken before about like levels of like niyyah. Can you kind of break down what that hierarchy looks like?
This was from a book by Dr. Sheikh Sulaiman Nadawi, and I first found it in Brother Nabil Azmi's book, The 11 Qualities of Leadership, and I kind of repackaged it to on the Barakah Effect. And the idea of the intention is that not all intentions are created equal, right? There are levels. So level one would be, I'm doing things purely for financial world gain. What's in it for me? That's the level one. Again, nothing wrong with this intention, but it's saying you could go higher. So the higher intention is, well, I do things, I don't care about the financial world gain, but what people, can I do it for honor, reputation, and fame? Like, what will people think of me, right? So sometimes you don't care about the finances, but you care about your reputation. Now, then there's above that where you don't care about what people think of you. You don't care about financial world gain. You do things purely because it feels good. And that's what most people are at. Most of the hustle culture, right? The ultimate level of hustle culture environment is it feels good. The question is, what happens when it doesn't feel good? Where do you go, right? And I think in our deen, we have this idea of sometimes things might not feel good, but you still do it. Why? Because of spiritual reasons. That's when you enter the spiritual realm, to do things because it feels good spiritually, right? Getting up for Fajr might not feel good, right? But you do it because it feels spiritually. Or sometimes you don't even feel good spiritually. You feel like, I'm just doing because I have to pray. Well, you're doing for the akhirah. And ultimately, the highest level, do things purely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, the reason why this hierarchy is so important is because it has impact on your productivity. If you do things purely for financial world gain, mostly I'm sure you've experienced this, when you get what you want, you feel that euphoria, which lasts for a day or two, right? You get a car, you get that deal, you sign a contract, awesome, you feel great. But then after a week or two, it kind of fizzles out. And if you don't get what you're looking for, you feel frustrated, stressed. I mean, back to those feelings we spoke about earlier. Now, if I do things for reputation and fame, if I'm successful, I might have always this conscious about fear of success, imposter syndrome. Oh my God, what people think all the time. You're always conscious of what people think. My LinkedIn profile will be perfect, and might have this fear of And if I'm not successful, and I see others be successful, that's when the jealousy, the envy, the hasad comes in. So that's not a healthy place to be. If you say, well, I don't care what people think, I don't care about financial work, because it feels good. Again, what happens when it doesn't feel good, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالُ وَكُرْهٌ لَكُمْ. It has been written for you to fight and you hate it. right? And Allah is no, because He knows the you no one wants to go and put their life on the line, right? So He knows that this is sometimes you got to do. And perhaps you might hate something, but it's good for you, right? I think sometimes idea of just feeding the feel good vibes, right? It's just not something got to sacrifice. Sometimes you have to go through some periods where it's like it doesn't feel good in the dunya sense, but I know this is good for my akhirah, good for my spiritually. And I feel like that's where you do something for the right reasons. You're willing to sacrifice. It's not like comfort seeking anymore. It becomes a mission. And you can turn a startup idea through this higher intention from just being a startup, which alhamdulillah feels makes money, to almost like a purpose-driven social enterprise that impacts ummah, like just by thinking about through this intention.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like, how should we approach, like, setting like big ambitious goals that might only seem like it has like worldly benefits, like how should we think about getting that promotion or like building that company, things that might not directly like relate to our akhirah. Like, is it wrong to want those things? Is it come down to our intention? Like, how would you kind of approach that?
Again, I like back to I say this many times, it's a frame of Allah, like I'm a slave of God, and now as a slave of God, how do I approach this promotion, this business I'm building? What's in it for me, right? Where do I go with this? And the question is, how can I leverage this to be a better abd of Allah, right? So how can I leverage my startup? For example, I was talking to a lady in Tanzania. She wants to open an abaya store. Okay, so level one, open an abaya store and make money. Nothing wrong. Halal, right? Or I open a abaya store, so people say, oh, mashallah, you have an abaya store, right? So kind of like the reputation. Or I open a abaya store because I like to sell abayas. I love the buying and selling. I just feel good. It gives me something to do. I feel good. Okay, there's nothing wrong with these intentions. But I told her, what if you upgrade your intentions for the akhirah? What would it look like? She goes, you know what? I can open a abaya store so I can spread modesty. That's my intention. Or I can open a abaya store or abaya store so that the proceeds can go towards girls' education. Or I can manifest the name Allah al-Jameel. Allah is beautiful, loves beauty, right? So suddenly, it's not just about an abaya store anymore. It becomes way more than that. Now think about motivation, think about impact, think about if she goes through struggles or challenges, how motivated she'll be. Another example is I had a software CTO. Mohammed, I just do code all day long. Like, come on, man, where's the intention? It's so hard, right? So, okay, which of the names of Allah you love the most? He goes, I love the name Al-Jameel, Allah the most beautiful. All right. Is there such thing as beautiful code? He goes, yes. Right? Like these high, like yes, right? So now it's like I'm producing work, and I'm engaged in my startup, and I'm engaged for the sake of doing this work. You spoke about promotion, which is very powerful. People, I always talk when I talk to professionals, they struggle with this. Like, I'm supposed to be humble, right? And now I want to seek promotion. Like, how does it work? And as I give the example of Dhul Qarnayn and Yusuf alayhi salam. Yusuf alayhi salam literally said, "Ij'alni ala khazain ard, inni hafidhun alim." Like, make me the treasure of Egypt. Like, there's no humble brag there, right? Make me but why? Inni hafidhun alim. I'm somebody who will be responsible. I know what I'm doing. So sometimes when you ask for promotion, it's not just for your ego. So I'm the best fit for this role. I know what I'm going to be doing. I have a sense of responsibility. I'm not just trying to make myself just fat my bank account. There's a reason why I want. That's number one. The second one is Dhul Qarnayn. Dhul Qarnayn, same thing. When they reproached him, he had all the skill and power. He said, "Okay, I'll build the dam." He said, "Okay, help me. I'll build the dam for you." There was a sense of responsibility, a sense of entitlement. Qarun had a sense of entitlement. Yeah, of course, I'm rich because I'm smart. I deserve this. Versus sense of responsibility. Again, this is a hustle culture versus barakah culture. So I think when it comes to promotion, is thinking how can I fulfill a purpose? How can I be more responsible? How will this impact others? And when even startup is to think about how can I upgrade my intention so that even the startup becomes a means of service for the ummah. I'll say we have two roles in life. One is the abd of Allah, which is I'm the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the other one is Khalifa. We are his almost like public officer. We're here to serve his creation. So in any case, any of these axes, how can I upgrade my abd of Allah and serve his creation the best way? And I think when you have that in whatever role, it's such a fulfilling experience.
Amazing. What's the importance of remembering death?
Oh gosh, it keeps you focused, right? I mean, you really focus on what matters. And it's interesting that Islam is a very healthy relationship with death. It's not this morbid Halloween guy with some big stick, I'm going to get you. it's actually a very healthy relationship with death, where it's seen as a continuation of a journey versus an end, right? And I think when, of course, the first thing that death does is that it kills all pleasures, which means all the stuff you do for your ego, all the feel-good stuff, just completely kills it. Which means, well, if this kills it, then what's left? What's left is what's for the akhirah. So start thinking about the akhirah. Start thinking about doing things for long term. It's not about planting the seeds that generations will benefit. It's about thinking about waqf, right, which is a big factor. Something that in startup culture, I made a post today about that, how we can build waqfable businesses. Just like, a lot of startups, the dreams to have a sellable business. Right?
Yeah.
Imagine build a waqfable business that you're actually selling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or at least, Allah's bot is buying your startup from you, so they last beyond you. I feel like that sort of level of experience, thinking is what we need to go at. So death is definitely is one of those experiences that you need to put front and center. And I recommend people to go visit the cemetery on a regular basis. Go follow janazah at least once a month. At least, if you're able to once a week. It really grounds you. It kills your ego, right? You realize where you're going. All the issues you have and the spitball between people and all the little fights you have, he's like, well, does it really matter in the big sense of things? So I think it's very powerful, makes the force what matters, and helps us become, again, more productive. Because I feel like it puts a sense of urgency. Because I can drop dead now. I can drop dead in a few minutes. I can drop dead it puts a sense of urgency to do what matters and not let things sort of slide, basically.
Amazing, yeah. Last question. If all your interviews were gone, your books were deleted, your blogs were wiped from the internet, and the only piece of wisdom that you share with the ummah is the next 30 seconds, what would you say?
I'll say have sincere intentions and work hard. Right? Have sincere intentions and work hard. That's the formula for success. When you have sincere intentions, means you're better abd for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're doing it for Him. And work hard means you have to put in the effort, and that's the gardener mindset.